Welcome back to XRP Matrix. What if the biggest XRP story of 2026 isn't the price, isn't the charts, and isn't even the headlines flooding your social media feed? What if it's the fact that some of the largest financial institutions on Earth are quietly building the infrastructure that could determine how money moves for the next decade? Today, we're breaking down a major statement from Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse, delivered live on Fox, and the timing could not be more important. In a single morning, 3 developments landed almost simultaneously. Mastercard confirmed Ripple's involvement in a major AI-powered payments initiative. RLUSD recorded explosive growth on the XRP Ledger, and Ripple revealed new details about the scale of its enterprise payment network. Most people looked at these stories separately. The smart money looked at them together. And when you connect the dots, a much larger picture begins to emerge. This isn't about hype. This isn't about promises. This is about infrastructure, adoption, and the positioning of XRP inside a financial system that appears to be evolving faster than many investors realize. If you've been following XRP for years, you've probably noticed something interesting. The conversation has changed dramatically. A few years ago, most debates centered around lawsuits, regulatory uncertainty, and questions about whether Ripple could survive intense legal pressure. Today, the conversation is increasingly focused on partnerships, enterprise adoption, stablecoins, and the future of global payments. That shift matters because markets often reward companies that move from defending their existence to expanding their influence. Brad Garlinghouse's Fox appearance reflected exactly that transition. Instead of spending most of his time discussing legal battles, he spent it discussing growth opportunities, AI integration, payment innovation, and institutional demand. That alone tells a story. Companies focused on survival talk about threats. Companies focused on expansion talk about building. And according to Garlinghouse, Ripple is actively building for what comes next. The question investors should ask themselves is simple. What exactly is Ripple preparing for, and why are some of the world's largest financial organizations suddenly moving in the same direction? One of the most significant announcements involved Ripple's launch of an AI-focused developer toolkit designed specifically for the XRP Ledger. Now, that might sound highly technical at first glance, but the implications are surprisingly easy to understand. Think about how artificial intelligence is changing industries. AI systems are increasingly being designed to make decisions, execute tasks, and respond to changing conditions without constant human oversight. When you combine that capability with payment systems, you create the possibility of software that can move money, settle transactions, and complete financial actions automatically. That's where Ripple sees opportunity. The company isn't simply preparing for today's financial environment. It's positioning the XRP Ledger for a future where intelligent software interacts with financial infrastructure at machine speed. Garlinghouse described this as making XRP and the XRP Ledger future-ready. That phrase may sound simple, but behind it sits a major strategic objective. Ripple wants its technology to remain relevant as the next generation of financial applications begins to emerge. The timing becomes even more interesting when you consider what Mastercard announced almost simultaneously. Mastercard revealed that it is working alongside approximately 30 organizations to help develop AI-driven payment infrastructure. Among those selected participants was Ripple. That inclusion matters more than many people realize. Large payment networks do not casually choose partners when planning future infrastructure. They select organizations they believe can contribute meaningful technology, reliability, and long-term value. Mastercard already operates on a global scale. It understands payments better than almost anyone. So when Ripple appears alongside other major industry participants, it sends a message. It suggests Ripple is being viewed as a serious player in the next evolution of digital finance. For XRP supporters, this isn't simply another partnership announcement. It represents validation from one of the most recognized payment companies in the world. And in the world of institutional finance, validation often opens doors that marketing campaigns never can. Garlinghouse also offered a surprisingly balanced perspective regarding AI. Rather than presenting artificial intelligence as some magical solution to every problem, he openly discussed the risks. He acknowledged that safeguards, oversight, and regulations will likely be necessary before AI-powered financial systems become mainstream. That honesty is important because it separates realistic leadership from promotional hype. Every major technological advancement comes with challenges. The internet had challenges. Mobile banking had challenges. Digital payments had challenges. AI will be no different. But according to Ripple's approach, the solution is not to wait until every issue is solved before building. Instead, the infrastructure is developed while security standards, compliance frameworks, and legal protections evolve alongside it. That approach mirrors how many transformative technologies have historically entered the market. The builders move first, regulators follow, and eventually standards emerge. Ripple appears determined to be among the builders rather than the observers. At the same time, another story has been unfolding quietly in the background, and that story involves RLUSD. Ripple's stablecoin has experienced remarkable growth in a relatively short period. According to Garlinghouse, RLUSD has rapidly climbed into the ranks of the world's leading stablecoins. But perhaps more impressive than its ranking is its growth rate. Over a recent 30-day period, RLUSD reportedly doubled in value on the XRP Ledger. That kind of growth attracts attention because it suggests adoption is accelerating rather than merely progressing. Stablecoins have become one of the most important segments of the digital asset industry. They serve as bridges between traditional finance and blockchain-based systems. They provide liquidity, they facilitate transactions, and increasingly, they are becoming critical components of institutional digital finance strategies. When a stablecoin grows at that pace, it signals demand. And demand often tells a more important story than headlines ever could. The relationship between RLUSD and XRP is also worth examining carefully. Some people mistakenly view them as competing products. In reality, they often complement each other within Ripple's broader ecosystem. Stablecoins provide stability and transactional utility, while XRP offers liquidity and settlement capabilities across networks. Together, they help create an infrastructure designed for efficient movement of value. That infrastructure becomes increasingly attractive when institutions begin exploring blockchain solutions. Banks, payment providers, and multinational corporations are not looking for speculation. They are looking for efficiency, reliability, and cost reduction. Ripple's strategy appears designed around meeting those specific needs. Instead of focusing entirely on retail enthusiasm, the company continues targeting institutional use cases. That distinction matters because institutional adoption often unfolds slowly, but can ultimately reach enormous scale. The companies that succeed in capturing those relationships tend to benefit from long-term network effects that are difficult for competitors to replicate. Another major point from Garlinghouse's interview involved Ripple Treasury, which many investors still underestimate. This platform is not designed for everyday consumers. It's built for corporate finance teams, treasury managers, and enterprise decision-makers who oversee enormous amounts of capital. According to Garlinghouse, Ripple Treasury currently supports approximately $13 trillion in annual volume. That number immediately captures attention because it demonstrates the scale at which Ripple is already operating. More importantly, Ripple's vision extends beyond simply monitoring those funds. The company wants a meaningful percentage of that volume, eventually transitioning onto blockchain-based infrastructure. Imagine what happens if even a fraction of that movement occurs. Suddenly, blockchain stops being viewed as a niche technology and starts functioning as part of mainstream financial operations. That is the transition Ripple appears to be pursuing. Not a sudden revolution, but a gradual migration of enterprise finance toward more efficient systems. As exciting as these developments may sound, Garlinghouse made it clear that one obstacle continues to limit growth within the United States. That obstacle is regulatory clarity. According to Ripple's leadership, many institutions remain interested in blockchain adoption, but hesitate to commit fully because legal uncertainty still exists. Banks do not like uncertainty. Corporate treasurers do not like uncertainty. Public companies do not like uncertainty. These organizations operate according to risk management frameworks. Until clear rules are established, many decision makers prefer caution over innovation. This is where the ongoing debate surrounding legislation becomes incredibly important. Garlinghouse argued that greater regulatory clarity could unlock significant participation from institutions currently waiting on the sidelines. In other words, the technology may already be ready, but the legal environment still needs to catch up. That brings us to one of the most closely watched discussions in Washington. The debate over crypto regulation has evolved into a battle between competing visions of the financial future. On one side are organizations advocating for clearer pathways to blockchain adoption. On the other side are institutions concerned about compliance, oversight, and potential disruptions to existing systems. Garlinghouse suggested that many of Ripple's international successes have occurred because other jurisdictions provided clearer frameworks sooner. While American institutions remain cautious, global adoption continues advancing. That creates an interesting dynamic. The longer uncertainty persists, the more opportunity may shift toward markets willing to embrace innovation. This is not just a Ripple issue. It affects the broader digital asset industry. The outcome of these debates could influence where investment, development, and financial innovation occur over the coming years. One of the most revealing moments from the Fox discussion involved the economics of payments themselves. Garlinghouse highlighted the enormous profits generated by traditional payment systems. International transfers often involve fees, delays, intermediary institutions, and settlement processes that can take days. Those inefficiencies create revenue for existing players. Blockchain technology challenges that model by offering faster settlement, increased transparency, and potentially lower costs. Whenever new technology threatens established profit structures, resistance should not come as a surprise. History shows this pattern repeatedly. Industries rarely volunteer to disrupt themselves. Instead, competition, innovation, and consumer demand gradually force adaptation. Ripple appears positioned at the center of one such transition. Whether that transition happens quickly or slowly remains uncertain, but the underlying economic incentives are becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. When you step back and examine everything together, the pattern becomes clearer. Ripple launches AI-focused development tools. Mastercard includes Ripple in a major AI payments initiative. RLUSD experiences rapid growth. Ripple Treasury manages enormous enterprise volume. Revenue projections continue climbing. Institutional interest remains strong internationally. Regulatory debates intensify in the United States. Viewed individually, these stories are interesting. Viewed collectively, they suggest a company building across multiple layers of financial infrastructure simultaneously. Payments, stablecoins, enterprise software, AI integration, and liquidity solutions are all moving toward the same destination. Ripple is attempting to position itself as a foundational component of future financial systems. Whether that vision succeeds completely remains to be seen, but the strategy itself is becoming increasingly visible. Perhaps the most fascinating observation came from a broader industry perspective. For years, critics dismissed XRP as the so-called banker's coin. The implication was that institutional focus somehow represented a weakness. Yet today, many projects throughout the digital asset industry are pursuing exactly the same audience. Banks, payment providers, enterprises, and institutional capital have become some of the most sought-after relationships in crypto. What was once criticized is now widely viewed as valuable. That shift in perception tells us something important about how the industry has matured. Early narratives often focus on ideology. Mature markets focus on utility, adoption, and revenue. Ripple's approach has consistently centered around integration with financial institutions. Now, as institutional adoption becomes one of the industry's most important themes, that positioning appears increasingly relevant. As we bring this all together, the central takeaway is surprisingly simple. Brad Garlinghouse's bullish comments were not based on price predictions or short-term market excitement. They were based on infrastructure, adoption, and long-term positioning. The AI payment networks are being built. Stablecoin adoption is accelerating. Enterprise relationships continue expanding. Regulatory battles are shaping the pace of adoption, and Ripple remains deeply involved in each of those developments. For XRP holders, the biggest question may not be what happens next week or next month. The bigger question is whether these structural trends continue strengthening over the next several years. Because if they do, today's headlines may eventually be remembered as early signals of a much larger transformation. Thank you for watching XRP Matrix. Stay informed, stay focused, and we'll see you in the next update.